Welcome everyone. It's been a while since I've created a video, and since I just finished two large projects, I thought I would go ahead and share the process. If you're new to my video, my name is Nena, and this is Nena's Art. So I've gotten into creating some mixed media collages lately, and I wasn't sure where I was headed with these, but I'm really happy with the way they turned out. So the inspiration is Dia de los Muertos, the altars that you see in my culture where we are honoring those that have passed. I had a huge loss this year, and so this was really significant for me this year. And even though I couldn't create one in my home, I wanted to honor this time in my art. So I'm putting together kind of a makeshift altar using decorative papers and some of my drawings. I had created these veladoras last year, actually, and had been saving them, waiting for the time to use them because I knew I wanted to do something similar to this, although my idea had evolved. So I drew them in miniature using watercolors and markers, and then I proceeded to cut them up. Once I cut them up, I started to create this somewhat of an altar, gluing them down using a new to me paste that is meant for lightweight papers, but I must say it is working out beautifully, and I'll post the name of that paste on the bottom. But I kind of just instinctively started putting down the images or the pieces that I wanted. I added things like frames. I didn't really want to draw any actual family members in my drawing, but those of you that are familiar with Mexican altars, you know that those frames signify the images of those we've lost and are commemorating. Then I put some pan dulce, of course, because that's a favorite of many family members. After that, I decided to add some papel picado, mostly because I needed something on the top part of my piece, but of course, everyone or almost everyone recognizes papel picado in the Mexican culture. I think they went really nicely on the top there, took care of that negative space I had going up there. It tied in the whole piece, I believe, especially since I'm also adding some large candles on the bottom of my piece, which you'll see shortly. You can also see that I added some tamales and some pan de muerto. And here is a view of the finished piece. I really like how it looks. And now my second piece was inspired by the Virgen de Guadalupe, which is also very significant in the Mexican culture. I wanted to continue to use the same idea of collage, drawing the main parts of the piece and using some of the same papers that I used in the previous piece. Now, I wanted to add significant imagery to the Virgen de Guadalupe piece, in that I wanted to tie in some of the indigenous traditions that relates to the Virgen de Guadalupe. And I'm speaking about Tonantzin, which is the Aztec goddess that many believe is the origin story for the Virgen de Guadalupe. And I'm drawing Mexican corn because Tonantzin is sometimes symbolized by corn as well as a snake and other imagery. And at this point, I'm not really sure what I'm going to create. I'm just creating the imagery that I know I'll be using. So the composition isn't going to come until much later. I also decided to draw some nopales, which at the end I don't even use. But at this point, I wasn't sure what the composition was going to look like, and I had the idea of maybe I would put them somewhere in the background. Decided to create the flower Sempoalxochitl. This is the flower that we believe guides the spirits of our loved ones back into our homes. I began drawing the flowers using a circular template, mostly just to try and keep the flowers the same size, even though I draw them differently. Some in just a bud form, some fully opened, but the circular template helps me to keep the flowers somewhat uniform in size. I began adding some color to the flowers, and I went ahead and just laid the color yellow on all of them. I knew that I was going to add different colors on top and perhaps some color pencils as well. I'm not really paying attention or taking any extra care of staying within the flower because ultimately I'm going to cut them out of their circular template. So as you can see, I'm liberally adding the color through the whole flower and not really worried about the color going outside of the flower. I have sped up the speed of my video. I do not paint this quickly, but it would have taken a very long time to view this video if I would have left it in the actual speed. So this is a much quicker version of how I actually paint. Once that first layer of watercolor paint dried, I decided to go in using markers. This is the Tombow alcohol-based brush tip marker that I am using on top of the watercolor. I'm using 3 different types of colors of the markers, and I'm being careful to allow some of that yellow watercolor paint to come through in between the petals. And this is what they look like once they are done. I began cutting out the flowers from their circular template. I do a really quick removal of the paper around the flowers. I then go back and take more care in cutting out the flowers, but I do leave the outline on the flower. Once I finish cutting out all the flowers, I began to work on assembling my composition. As I had stated before, I really wasn't sure of where I was headed with this piece, what it was going to look like. I was also trying to figure out what papers to use for the background. I have several different decorative papers, but ultimately I decided to use the same paper backing that I had used on my previous piece. I figured this way they would be tied together visually. But I'm still playing around trying to figure out where to put the corn, where to put the flowers. I also decided to go back in and change the color of the vid hen, what she's wearing. I darkened her a little bit more and added somewhat of an outline. And here is the finished piece. I'm very happy with the way she turned out, and I hope you enjoyed this video.